streets can be dense for our acts. The sea can be deep for our diving. Hope comes and stops us in our tracks. Bravely we prove in our striving, trudging together each day. Where there's a will, there's a way.
The views and opinions expressed on Trudging Together are solely those of the host, co-host, and our guests. They do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization, fellowship, or other entity, and definitely not your boss, your neighbor, or that one guy in your home group. The content of this program is not intended to replace medical, psychological, or professional advice. If you're looking for that, please seek guidance from qualified professionals who spent way too many years in school. What you'll hear here is based on lived experience, recovery journeys, and the occasional bad coffee-fueled joke. Trudging Together is not affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. We are simply people sharing our stories and walking this path together, one day at a time. Thank you for joining us, and remember, recovery is serious business, but that doesn't mean we can't laugh along the way.
Welcome to Raw Recovery, a Trudging Together podcast. So today we're gonna hit a little different. I've got Matt Brown on. He's an interventionist, and not the TV version. He's the real deal, folks. He has over 20 years working with families who are out of options, out of patience, and scared as hell they're going to lose someone. And this right here, straight from his website. If you've tried everything, reasoning, pleading, ultimatums, waiting for them to hit bottom, you're exhausted, you're scared, and you might even feel a little guilty for considering intervention. And if that hits you, this conversation matters, because a lot of people talk about helping, but when it comes time to draw the line or actually step in, most people freeze, enable, or avoid it. And Matt does not do that. He's lived in this. He's in recovery himself. And now he's the guy families call when everything is on the line. He runs Freedom Intervention, and he hosts the Party Wreckers podcast. No fluff, just what actually works. So today we're going to talk about what intervention really looks like, when it's time to step in, and why loving someone is not the same thing as helping them. So let's get into it. Matt, it is great to have you on the show. We got to talk a little bit beforehand. It is great to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, I'm really glad to be here. I appreciate the invitation and making time for me.
Yeah. Intervention, 20 years is when you were growing up, were you thinking, man, I'm going to be an interventionist?
No, no. In fact, my 11-year-old says to me the other day, she said, Daddy, I think I want to be an interventionist when I grow up. And I said, wait. No, you don't want to do that. She said, why? She said, because most people who end up being interventionists were drug addicts or alcoholics first. Yeah. And she went, oh, okay. Yeah, no, I don't want to be an interventionist. So yeah, I never envisioned that. I was one of these kids that was never quite settled on anything. Okay. Of course, when I was really young, it was like, I want to be a fireman or a police officer. Sure.
President of the United States.
Then it was, exactly. Astronaut. And then it was, in high school, I thought, maybe, go into being a lawyer or a doctor, thinking like, I wanted to make a lot of money. And, actually ended up working in the entertainment business. I actually ended up trying my hand as an actor out in LA for a while. And that's where things started really to go south for me. I had been drinking and using up to that point, but that was kind of the jumping off point where I got into the deep end of the pool. And that let's just say that didn't work out too well. And ultimately that led me to being an interventionist.
It was during that era, though, because I'm presuming it was 80s, 90s, because you seem to be around Gen X like me.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of what we expected of those people, though, to be outrageous, to be over the top. We had a lot of people, John Belushi. I mean, we could sit here and name them.
Kurt Cobain, all the ones that were dead in their late 20s.
Yeah. And you could even go back to the 70s on that.
Yeah.
I was born 4 hours after Jimi Hendrix died. So, no, the answer is no.
You're not a reincarnated version of Jimi Hendrix? Okay.
I have a drum set here, but it's mostly for show.
I got you.
well, lately. All right. So, um, you know, I really like to talk about some of the harder things here. So before we get into anything, what are people getting wrong about helping someone that they love? What are some common mistakes that because I know as I'm a recovered alcoholic and I have codependency issues. I
Mhm.
see it clearly. If I had a magic wand to cure you, I'd do it. Which is why God has not given me the magic wand. Because I would abuse that sucker. Already they're making a mistake enabling. What are some of the common mistakes that you've kind of seen?
Well, the biggest one, I just made a video on this today for social media.
Oh, nice.
The biggest thing that I see is that families, they just wait. They let
Okay.
that fear or the guilt paralyze them to the point where it's just like, well, does this really have to happen today?
Yeah.
And they'll wait and they'll kick the can down the road a little ways, and they just don't get decisive about, okay, now it's time. Usually there's a big event that
Yeah.
will happen, whether it's an arrest or a hospitalization
Yeah.
or junior fails out of college or something that's too big to ignore anymore.
Yes.
That's usually where families get into action, but those little patterns along the way
Okay.
a lot of times get lost. And when you neglect the patterns and only look for the events, I think
Yes.
families look at that as an opportunity to say, okay, well, it's not that bad yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yet.
Right.
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 It's, they're young. It's a phase. Now they're
Right.
27 now. It's not a phase anymore.
Well, and it's amazing how, oftentimes we look at the excuses or the lies that the alcoholic would tell.
Uh huh.
"Oh, I can quit whenever I want, or I'm not as bad as so and so."
Yeah.
But
Sure.
the families are right there making those same excuses. They just got a little bit, they're dressed up a little bit differently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so there's dishonesty, albeit unintentional. There's
Sure.
dishonesty happening on both sides.
Yeah.
There's self-delusion happening on both sides. And most of the time, it's the family that has to come out of that delusion first.
Absolutely. Well, what do they say? 20 years of living with an alcoholic would make anybody neurotic.
Hmm.
Right. Um, that kind of leads us to the dysfunctional family. That in some way, everybody in the family is to some extent ill.
Yes,
Um, Usually, if there's an alcoholic husband or alcoholic wife, usually the partner came from an alcoholic family who was either the hero or the lost child, most likely, and
absolutely.
they're codependent, and they're just kind of keeping that. That's what they were taught in their family. So this is not abnormal for them.
It's not. And it's really just two sides of the same coin. A lot of
Yeah,
time it comes from that generational trauma, whether it's growing up in an alcoholic home where that trauma was passed on from one generation to the next, or it's undiagnosed
sure.
mental health issues, or, a lot of other things that are contributory to this. But when you really dig down and you look at, okay, why does an alcoholic or an addict drink or use? It's because I don't want to feel what I'm going to feel if I
Yeah,
don't drink or use.
that's right.
The same thing holds true to a codependent.
Okay.
We dress it up as, I'm doing this because I love them. I'm doing this because I don't want them to have to suffer unnecessarily. I have the ability to help here, and so
Yeah,
I'm going to do that. And we dress it up as love, and I do believe that it comes from a loving place. I just
I
want to
do
be
too.
clear about that.
Absolutely.
But if we dig a little bit deeper, the motives are almost always the same. I don't
Hmm.
want to feel what I'm going to feel if I don't engage in this enabling behavior. I don't want to
Yep.
feel the fear. I don't want to feel the guilt. I don't want to feel like I'm a bad parent or spouse or
Hmm.
sibling or friend. And
And gosh,
so
that's hard.
a
Yeah.
lot of times those behaviors are driven by the same mechanism that drives addiction. It's just the other side of the coin.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, what are some of those? Because you were kind of talking about instances, right? There are things, we'll call them the little things until the big thing blows up. What are some of the things that we could look out for as parents and grandparents, people that love other people, of these small things that we ignore? What are some of those
Yeah, the patterns. There's so
patterns?
many
That's what it was.
different
Thank
there's
you.
so many different things we can look at. A lot of times the most visible ones are related to finances,
Okay.
where so-and-so's consistently asking for money, and oftentimes it's not a lot of money. It's just, hey, I need $100 here, I need $20 here,
Yeah.
and I've got to cover the bill. Or and a lot of families will look at that and say, they're just still kind of getting on their feet. One of those excuses or those self-delusional
Sure.
lies that we tell. And we don't look at that as a big event. Hey, they're just asking for $50.
Yeah.
But when you look at it over the course of time, and you establish the pattern of, hey, at the end of this year, can I look and see how much I actually gave my son or my daughter?
Oh,
And
yeah.
now we're looking at a number that's in the thousands. And none of those moments where I gifted them money actually changed their life for the better.
That's right.
Nothing actually changed. It's just I'm doing what I can to help keep their nose above water. But am I really, or am I just prolonging the experience where if I would allow them to struggle a little bit, that might create an opportunity for them to actually raise their hand and say, okay, I want some help.
Yeah.
And the other ones, a lot of times it just revolves around dishonesty with little things. Hey, you told me you were over here, but really what I heard from a friend is that you were at the bar. Or, little things here and there where they don't necessarily account to be a monumental crisis.
Sure.
But the little behaviors over the course of time, a lot of times those can either get excused or sometimes it's, losing a job, or even, being put on disciplinary action at work, or students being put on probation, academic probation, or something like that, where yes, there were many things that happened that led up to that.
Yeah.
But now that we're at hey, you're getting fired or you're getting kicked out of school, did we see the patterns beforehand? They were consistently late for work. Why was that?
Yeah.
They consistently didn't go to class. Why was that?
Yeah.
And those patterns, they mean something if we can pay attention to them.
Yeah. It's the, as somebody who is an alcoholic who, spent most of his time manipulating, if I asked you, I would ask for small amounts of money so you didn't really think about me. And that was part of the trick. We knew what we were doing, $20 here, $50 there. But, if I ask for 1,000, we're on a different plane now. Right. So if I keep it small.
So you had 10 people you could ask for 100 from.
There you go. And now I've got what it is that I want. These patterns are, and I agree. I'm a pattern person also, where I see a pattern, and once it gets a little, like my friends, if they're not acting the same way as they always do, I know something's up, and then I ask her, are you okay?
Well, actually, and I don't mean this to be a plug, although it will probably sound like that. I'm actually I'm building an app right now. I just submitted the patent on it, but I'm actually using AI to help families identify patterns of behavior around money, around medication, around other communication styles. And for $20 a month, families are going to be able to subscribe to this app and actually have AI help them. There's going to be a group chat feature where the AI is actually going to be monitoring the group chat and being able to identify, hey, mom, you're leaning a little on the codependent side. Here's some enabling behaviors that I want you to be able to look at. For the addicted individual, it's, you're showing up in a very dishonest and manipulative way. And here's some instances where you communicated that way. And so it's giving real-time feedback to them. There's also a window in there where families can go privately and say, hey, I just got a text message from so-and-so. How do I respond to this? And AI will actually help them craft a response. So that they're not getting their buttons pushed and responding emotionally. And then, the other cool thing is that as an interventionist, if it's getting to the point where they need somebody to jump in, all they have to do is hit a button, and with a subscription that they're paying for, I'll jump in for 24 hours and help them put out a fire.
There you go. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. So I think AI is when I saw that it started to become a little bit more widely used, I guess is the best way to describe it. I thought, well, how is this going to impact the addiction recovery work that I'm doing, or that the world at large is doing. And so I just kind of came up with this idea. It actually started around the idea of families, when they're going through a divorce where parents are hostile towards one another as they're
Yes,
dealing with custody and things like that they have to communicate through an app. And I'm like, well, I have people that are hostile towards their parents all the time in intervention situations.
absolutely.
And so I kind of started building this thing and just put one layer on top of another. And it's ended up being something that I've actually decided I want to patent. So I submitted the application this week, and we'll see what happens.
That's fantastic. What would you say to the people that would tell you, well, AI is dangerous? Because I utilize ChatGPT, which is not the same as AI. These are two different things, folks. And ChatGPT is very codependent, very codependent. So, what would you say to people that would say, well, AI is kind of dangerous? And because there's also ways that you can utilize AI to fit your pattern and what you do and what
Absolutely.
you would say. There
It
is a way to do that.
has everything to do with how you train it.
Yes, it is. Yes.
So the prompt that you build, and I don't want to get too technical here because I know that's not what you want to talk about.
But they'll be curious.
But the prompt that you build, like, don't go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm depressed. Can you help me not be depressed? Like, don't use ChatGPT as your therapist.
Yes.
But if you were to go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I have a question, and I want you to answer this as a master's level therapist.
Yes.
That has 40 years of personal recovery, who understands the big book in and out.
Yeah.
And then ask your question, you're going to get a very different answer than if you just went cold into ChatGPT and said, hey, what do I do when I think I'm going to take a drink?
There you go. It's a tool that needs to be that
you have to train it.
It's just like a hammer. You got to learn how to use it. You can't just pick up, start hammering. You're going to hit your thumb a couple times. You're going to do that. But and of course, let's kind of switch back. Because what kind of goes through my mind with intervention, because people say, well, not my kid, right, is usually where we start. We have certain levels of denial. It is much easier for me to say, hey, you need to report that to the police, to someone, as opposed to when it happens to me. Then it gets really hard, right? And do I follow those same rules? Is that kind of part of what they go through? Is it, you think that's maybe part of a denial?
Maybe not necessarily so much with the police, although sometimes that will happen and we have to go there. But most of the time, it's so insidious that it doesn't just from one day to the next go, oh, wow, they just got a DUI and I never saw that coming. Most of the time, there are, like I said, there's patterns, there's signs, but those get explained away. And oftentimes when you're dealing with somebody who's using either alcohol or drugs and the parents are drinkers, or, alcohol is something that's widely used in the family, maybe not to an abusive level, but it's something that's enjoyed. You're like, well, wait a minute. If little Timmy has a drinking problem, then what am I going to do? And so a lot of times there's a barrier there because I don't want to have to confront something in myself because my kid has a problem. And a lot of times when I'm working within a family and I maybe I'm talking to the mom and she's saying, well, my husband really doesn't think this is a good idea. My first question is always, how much does he drink?
Yep.
And usually the answer is probably as much as my son or my daughter.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're not going to really tell you that. You're going to have to dig that out of them a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And just because somebody's holding down a job, we get this idea of, well, dad may be a functional alcoholic. Well, kids falling off the rails. Alcoholism is alcoholism. And functional alcoholic is just somebody that still hasn't managed to lose their job. But it really functioning in the best definition of function, just because I can bring home a paycheck doesn't mean the rest of my life is going well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I call those the bedevilments, where we all, it's a landing spot where we all land. What it came down to was I couldn't be of real use to anybody around me. I couldn't seem to have adult relationships. I couldn't be one with a fellowship or a brotherhood or sisterhood. That was the problem. And and I appreciate, because I've been catching this, is in the beginning, we kind of need to let them be as honest as they can be, because they don't really know that they're being dishonest. And is that a part that you kind of handle in intervention to kind of make that switch?
Yeah, and it's really about a lot of this is just learned over the years of doing this, is knowing what
Yeah,
to listen for,
sure,
knowing
yeah.
what's not, and also hearing what they're not saying,
Mm,
and starting to ask questions around that. Well, I'm hearing this, but what I'm not hearing is I don't have a problem and I don't need help. I'm hearing
mm,
that, I'm struggling to go to work on a regular basis, but I got this under control. But you're not coming straight out and saying, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm not a drug addict, I don't have a problem. Am I hitting the nail on the head here? Do you really feel like there might be a problem here, but you're just maybe telling yourself that you have it under control?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That under control. The great obsession of most alcoholics is, wanting to drink, turn around, drink like a gentleman. For me, I just wanted to fit in. I
Yeah,
didn't care whether you thought I was an alcoholic or not. If you called me an alcoholic, I'd take your alcohol and drink it just to prove you're right.
right.
Right. Um, what do you think? Because there's a line between loving someone and enabling them. Is is there kind of a point of no return, or anything? Now that's not the right word. What would you think is kind of the difference between? I mean, and I agree with you. They do love them. They do. It's just the action is kind of wrong because they don't know any better. Maybe they're naive.
That's the
They're not
difference right
stupid. They're
there.
not naive.
Absolutely. And what you've just described is the absolute definition of how
Okay.
I would describe the difference is that the feeling of love is there. The
Sure.
action is just the wrong action.
Yeah.
And so that's where we have to really make the distinction is there's no doubt in my mind that you love this person.
Mhm.
And there's no doubt in my mind that the choices that you're making are driven because of that love. But are they giving you the results that you've wanted them to give you? And if
Mm.
not, can we look at a different way to love this person with the same degree of intensity, with the same
Yeah.
degree of
Yeah.
heart that you've got into this? Can we look at maybe a different way to love them that will start to produce the results that you're looking for?
Yeah.
And I'm not telling them you're doing it wrong,
Yeah. You can. Yeah. That's not.
because honestly, they're doing it the best they know how, and there's nothing
With
wrong
what
with that.
that's right. Yeah.
But as we grow, as we learn, if we can learn different ways to do things and actually get the results that we're looking for, everybody wins.
Hmm. And that's what you need in this situation.
Yeah.
You need a win-win. This person needs to know that, yeah, this person is going to change, and the person going through it needs to know that these people have their back while they're doing that. And that's where an interventionist comes in. Michelle has a question for you.
Yeah,
Mark, are you an alcoholic in recovery?
I am. In fact, on Monday, I get to celebrate 23 years sober.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
As long as I don't drink or use between now and Monday, I
Okay,
should be all right. But yeah,
day at a time.
thank you,
Chance to
Michelle.
make it, coming up on 10 years here in 16 days myself.
Right
So
on.
congratulations, brother.
Thank you.
23 years. Wow. Phenomenal. Um, what's a boundary that may sound harsh, but is actually necessary?
Okay, this is a really good question.
Thank you.
I get this from families all the time because I do a free Zoom call every Monday night where families can come and ask questions.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
this particular question gets asked without fail almost every single Monday night.
Wow. Wow.
Why? Number one, how do I set a boundary?
Uh-huh.
And how do I do it without sounding mean?
Yeah.
Some of the more extreme boundaries are the ones where you have to end a relationship, or you have to ask someone to leave your home, or you have to withdraw financial support, or a number of things that are really like lines in the sand.
Yeah.
The hard part is for most people, if you had parents like mine, I knew how to push past those boundaries. I knew how to test them in a very effective way
Yep.
and get you to remove those boundaries, whether it was making you feel guilty or making you feel afraid, or, just
Sure.
being an asshole.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the guy that I was. And, I knew what buttons to push when to push them, how hard to push them to get people back in the box that I needed them to live in.
Yeah.
And those boundaries become very difficult because if you're not consistent with them, you lose credibility with a guy like me.
Yeah.
And so when you tell me you got to go, I'm thinking, sure I do.
Yeah. We don't quite believe it.
We'll see about that. And what families don't realize that they haven't been honest, and that
Yeah.
not in a malicious way, but you lose credibility with a guy like me because you can't keep your word. And
Yeah.
so oftentimes what I'm recommending for families is to start out with much different boundaries, to be
Okay.
able to say, when you speak to me in an abusive way, the way you're speaking to me right now, I'm going to have to leave this conversation, and we'll pick it up when you're ready to be respectful.
That
And
is
then
fair.
leave the conversation when it happens again.
You got to
Now-
follow through on the action. You have to.
Exactly, because now I've set a boundary, I've enforced that boundary, and here's the difference. A boundary has to have a consequence attached to it, or else it's not a boundary. It's a
That's right.
request.
Yeah.
And requests are fine. A lot
Yeah.
of times when you're in a healthy relationship, I can say to you, hey, would you please not do that anymore?
Yeah.
And you're
My
like,
wife
hey,
and
you
I
know
do that
what?
all the
Wow,
time.
I didn't
Yeah.
realize that I was doing something that was stepping on your toes. Of course I'll change that.
Yeah.
I don't need to give you a consequence. And most of the time, out of mutual respect or love, a request works just fine.
Yeah.
But by the time it has to get to the point where there's a boundary, the requests have been made and denied.
Yes.
And so now I have to do something different. And I have to say, when you speak to me this way, I'm going to leave the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the difference between a boundary and an ultimatum. Is an ultimatum says, you can't talk to me like that anymore, or else.
That's right. Yeah.
A boundary
Or else.
says, I'm not going to be spoken to this way, or I'm going to leave the conversation. I'm
Yeah.
telling you what I will or won't put up with, where my generosity ends and your responsibility begins.
Mhm.
And I'm really defining for you what my life will and won't look like
Yeah.
based on your behavior. But
Mhm.
it's not an ultimatum. You can do whatever you want. A lot of times the example that I'll use with families is, imagine that we live in this great big medieval castle.
Yeah.
It's got the stone walls, it's got the watchtowers on top, it's got the moat, it's got the drawbridge. All of those defensive mechanisms are there, not because I'm trying to control the people on the outside. They can do whatever they want.
Absolutely.
I'm not trying to control them one bit. In fact, the better my boundaries are, the less control I'm trying to exert over other people.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's really the way that I want families to look at those boundaries is, I'm trying to protect what's on the inside of those walls, not
Yeah.
control what's on the outside. And if you're going to come into my castle, first of all, I need to be a person whose castle you want to hang out in,
Yep. There we
you
go.
know, and so that's my responsibility. But if you're going to come into my castle, then we need to have some agreements on how we're going to show up for one another.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can let the drawbridge down. And that drawbridge in a case like this is sobriety.
Yes. Yeah.
And so if you want to agree to be sober, hey, that drawbridge is going to come down. It's going to come down quick. And I want you to come into my castle.
Yeah. And
But
after a while, you're going to show up and the drawbridge will be down because
That's
you're
right.
welcome.
That's right. But
Yeah.
if you don't, okay, go do your thing. Be
Yeah.
you.
Go swim
But
in
I'm
the
going to
moat.
keep the drawbridge up for a little while.
Yeah. And I appreciated that because as an alcoholic, if you gave me an ultimatum, I'm just going to pick whatever's most inconvenient for you. I
Yep.
will react to that.
Yeah.
But
Dion,
if
you need
put
to
a
do
boundary-
this. You should do this. You have to do this. My first thought is, oh, really? We'll see
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. You know, when I was called an alcoholic at 14, I took it as name calling and said, I will show you alcoholic. And I did. By 17, I was living on Skid Row.
Yeah.
So, you know, I showed them. How do you feel about tough love?
Okay. First, I'll say first
And
of all,
kind of your definition on it. 'Cause
I
people
hate the
have
phrase tough love. I hate it
Okay.
because it's so subjective and
It
people
is.
really abuse it. Because tough love to me might mean something different than it would to somebody else. And so
Yes.
I think most of the time people think tough love and they think we just have to draw this in, this uncrossable line in the sand.
Yeah.
And I have to be so inflexible that most of the time when I hear tough love, it just means somebody's really angry. And I'm practicing
Or
tough
hurt.
love because
Yeah.
I've been hurt, I'm angry, and it's a very emotionally driven experience.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to tell you what's going to happen because you've crossed my boundary, and now I'm angry about that. And now the consequence is going to come. And a lot of times what that feels like is I'm going to get louder. I'm going to
Yeah.
talk more. And I think that I'm practicing tough love because I am more emotional.
Mhm.
I am angry. And that anger and that emotion is the consequence of you crossing that boundary. And that's not true at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
First of all, when I tell people to create boundaries, never do it from a place of emotion.
Oh, it's got to.
Because as
I've
soon
made
as
that
the
mistake.
yeah, as soon as the anger is gone, so is the boundary. As soon as the
Yeah.
hurt is gone, so is the boundary.
Yes.
And so when you think tough love, you have to balance the two. Yes, there can
Yeah.
be some tough, but there
Sure.
has to be some love present as well.
Yeah.
And you have to remember that the tough is there because of the love.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really hesitate to use that with families just because
Sure.
it can be misinterpreted.
I
But
was more curious than anything else on
yeah,
your thought. But it leads to a really good question. Is waiting for them to hit bottom just an excuse? Because what we're talking about here is these consequences bring their bottom. We're trying to make the bottom hit them is kind of what we're trying to do here, which is what AA is known for,
it is.
right? So waiting for them to hit bottom, is that let me reframe the question. Is waiting for them to hit bottom just an excuse?
I don't think it's an excuse.
Okay.
It can be made into an excuse because now I'm putting the entirety of the change of the responsibility for the change on them.
Yeah.
It doesn't require me to stop enabling them. It doesn't require me to set any boundaries. And so I'm just going to stand back and wait for them to hit bottom. But yet I'm still going to put a roof over their head, and I'm still going to finance their addiction. I'm still going to let them drive my car or use a cell phone or whatever the things that I'm doing it out of love and generosity. But it
Sure.
doesn't require change on my part.
Mm.
I look at bottom as not an event. It's not the arrest. It's not the hospitalization. It's not the job loss or the divorce. I think that hitting bottom is a feeling. And I think
Fair.
that it's a feeling that can be created
Okay.
without orchestrating a failure. If you know what I mean. Like if I'm trying to create failure in your life, you don't have to take responsibility for that. If I'm, doing things that are pushing you towards a bottom,
Oh yeah.
you
Yeah,
can
we
look
get
at me and go, wait, no, wait a minute. This is your
Yeah.
fault. You
Yeah.
made this happen. But if I can say, I'm not going to finance your addiction anymore.
Mhm.
I will help when it comes time for you to get sober. If you need treatment or if you need, help in that way, that's where my resources can be better used. But
Yeah.
I'm no longer going to do this. I'm not necessarily creating failure. I'm allowing you and loving you enough to experience the choices that you're making.
Mm.
And I look at that as a little bit different, but the bottom can come quicker if we get out of the way
Yeah.
and love them enough to let them have the experience they're choosing to have.
Yeah.
Because it really does come down to that feeling of hopelessness and desperation that
Sure.
we all need at some point.
Yeah. And everybody in a dysfunctional family tends to feel that because our survival instincts are being torn asunder for security, having a roof over our head, knowing that we have food, that dad isn't going to come home and beat us because he's in a mood, those types of things.
Yeah. Well, in the literature, it says we came to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it.
Yeah.
Nobody gets into recovery for a long term until they felt that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what happens when we come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life is that we have this opening where people can lay a kit of spiritual tools at our feet and we can actually pick that up and start to use it. And unless I'm hopeless, unless my life becomes futile, I don't have any motivation to pick up that kit of spiritual tools.
Correct. Yeah.
And so that's when I tell families, like, the enabling has to stop first. We're not trying to punish them. We're
Yeah.
giving them what we call the gift of desperation, and
Yes.
allowing them to feel the responsibility that is naturally theirs. And a lot of that, sometimes that can happen in a matter of an hour or two in
Yeah.
an intervention. We sit down and we've got a family with a message that they're ready to deliver in a way that conveys honesty and love, and but also the seriousness of this and their commitment to change for themselves.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's like, okay, yeah, I was already feeling uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing where my family is now, I don't want to live in, I can see the bottom before I get there.
Yeah.
And I can feel that bottom before I
That's
get
what
there.
happened. That's what happened with me. I was at the end. Of course, there were other things, but I knew my wife was getting ready to head out the door, and that was not a consequence I was willing to take.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it's time. And she would sit there and tell me, she was my girlfriend before. She got a black belt in Al-Anon, so that helped a little bit. I know the sober Dion, so I'm just going to love you until you decide to do that again. Of course, I took advantage of that because I'm an alcoholic. I heard the codependency. I'm like, oh, I could pull this off for a little bit longer.
Oh yeah.
But the one person in this world that I felt truly understood me leaving me, no go. Nope. So I decided to get back into recovery. Do families also do you also see that the family kind of needs to change? Like the question really is, why do families want change but don't want to change themselves?
They misunderstand the disease.
Yes.
And
Okay.
and they look at this from the standpoint of, well, if so and so has cancer and they go get cancer treatment, then they're going to be okay. But if so and so has alcoholism and they go in and get alcoholism treatment, they don't understand that. I heard a therapist that I really respect. He put it
Okay.
this way. He said, alcoholism is a parasite that tries to kill its host and everything around it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And when you look at that from that standpoint and really look at that, this is a family system that's been infected by a parasite.
Yeah.
And unless everyone gets treatment for that, and it doesn't mean that everyone has to go and be in an inpatient setting.
Yeah. No.
But there has to be some change in the support system, because you and I have both seen this, I'm sure, many times, where someone goes to treatment or they go to AA and they get sober only to be coming home to a system that hasn't made the changes that they've needed to change or looked at their own part in this.
Yeah.
The old behaviors come back with a quickness.
Within a day. If you no change, no change. And it's hard to come out of treatment back to the same exact thing. Which is usually why treatment centers have family days where the family's supposed to come in, they talk to the family, give them resources. One of the resources that we're putting in at Detox is let's say let's say my wife was bringing me in, drops me off. Somebody else is going to approach her and say, do you need any help? Do you need anything? Is there anything we can do to help you out with this situation so that we can start to bring families back into this? I remember when I used to go to AA in the 90s, everybody hopped in the car because you go to the meeting, there'd be an AA meeting, an Al-Anon meeting, and an Alateen meeting. The parking lot would be full of people in recovery from different areas because it was a family disease, and then the family heals together. Which I think is phenomenal. I love watching people heal. Just as we start to get closer to the end here, what did you believe early on that you now know was wrong? Love that question. Makes it a little hard. It's a little hard.
There's so many different directions that I could take this. In the very beginning of my own personal recovery, I hated the idea of God.
Okay.
I grew up in a very dysfunctional religious family, and religion was weaponized. God was weaponized.
Okay.
And I did not want to have to believe that there was a spiritual solution to this. I just wanted to quit.
Yeah.
and I'd rather fist fight you than talk about God.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had been more open-minded
Okay.
early on in my recovery. And I wish that families would look at this. It is a medical disease, don't get me wrong, but it's a medical
Sure.
disease with
Yeah.
a spiritual solution.
Yep.
And when I try to steer families away from the idea that this is just simply a mental health issue
Yeah.
or simply a behavioral issue. So many of us want to solve a problem with an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety med
Yeah.
or anti-ADHD med or whatever it is, a mood stabilizer. If we could just get them on the right medication, then they'll stop drinking. But the minute that I really opened my mind to understand that maybe there is something to this whole spirituality thing,
Yeah.
my recovery was taken to a different level. And you know, as it says on the same page we were talking about earlier, that God entered into my life in a way which is indeed miraculous. And
Yeah.
it's not the idea of a God that I grew up with, but it's one that keeps me sober.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing, the belief that I wish that I would have been able to change earlier on.
Yeah.
In terms of intervention, I think that the belief that I see families struggle with more than anything is that once they go to treatment, we're going to be good. And they don't really look at this as a lifelong treatment of an illness that will come back, that there will be a recurrence of this illness if it doesn't continue to be treated on a regular basis.
Yeah. It's a lifestyle change. You know, this is how I live my life, and I have to be consistent. I made the mistake before. I had 10 years, and I got sober at 18, and I'm relapsed. I'm like, who isn't an alcoholic at 19, right? Same silly stuff. But I forgot that I was living on Skid Row. You know, the consequences had gotten pretty bad, and we tend to forget that, and that's why I like the consistency. But I would agree, because I see a lot of places out there where they're, oh, it's got to be clinical. No, it's got to be spiritual. And we need both of these. It takes a tribe. Without my therapy, I wouldn't be able to do half of what I do.
Absolutely.
But, and I'm diagnosed with 5 different mental illnesses, but steps 10 and 11, 12 help me maintain every single one of them. Every single one. But of course, I had to do the work beforehand.
Those first 9 steps were just as important.
Yeah. What was there a case that still sticks with you?
There's a few of them. After 20 years, I've done upwards of 1,000 interventions, and
wow.
There's one in particular that I will share with families, and it just really kind of shows you God's hand in this work. I was in Waco, Texas, and there was a young man there. He was a Baylor student, and he was in the Army Reserves. And this is kind of early on in our war in Afghanistan. And he ended up getting deployed. He was a sniper. He was deployed and saw combat. He took lives. And he came back and really drank to forget. Had some really severe PTSD.
Yeah.
And when he drank, he got violent. He got angry. He'd been, put in the drunk tank for fighting, a number of times. His dad had passed away. He had 2 brothers and a mom, and some of the guys that were in his reserve group there in Waco. And we thought he was going to walk in, and we thought he was just going to want to start throwing punches.
Sure.
And we were ready for that, just in case. We had a plan for that.
Good.
But what ended up happening is he walked into that room, and I almost never have the person walk in to where we are. I almost always walk in to where they are, just because it's less likely for them to turn tail and walk out.
And you're meeting them where they're at.
Yeah.
In a literal sense.
We couldn't set it up that way this time. And so he walked in, and the moment he walked in, he looked around, he saw the people that were in the room. He saw a perfect stranger. He knew immediately what it was, and he just started to cry.
Oh, man.
And, you know, I gave him a moment. And I said, hey, what's going on? And he said, I had a dream last night. And in my dream, I was told I was going to get some help. Where am I going? And 15 minutes later, we were in the car headed to treatment. And it was just one of those moments where you think you have all your bases covered. You think that you're in complete control of this situation. And unless you invite God in, you never know what's happening even 24 hours beforehand.
Yeah.
That makes every bit of training that I ever had completely irrelevant. God gets to show up and say, you know what, Matt, this time I got this one.
Yeah.
And it was just one of those moments where I just got to say, okay, God, thanks for taking charge here.
Well,
And
I can still feel the emotions coming off of you right now. It made me a little weepy.
It was really one of those moments where it was just beautiful. And all the way the intervention was in Waco. He was going to treatment down in Dallas, which was about, hour and a half, 2 hours away, or not Dallas, in Austin.
Okay.
And I just got to see this guy fall asleep. Like, he just slept in the car next to me. And it was just like, this man was finally at peace and was able, his body was able to relax, and he just slept the whole way there.
I'm sure he did.
He wasn't worried. He didn't feel anxious. He didn't have questions. It was just like, the fight is over.
Well, that has a lot. There's a lot to say there because of the PTSD.
Yeah.
And then riding with a stranger, our survival modes don't let us do that. So something was there.
Yeah.
To make him feel comfortable enough to turn his back to you and fall asleep.
Yeah.
Wow. What a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, you bet.
So, all right. As you wrap up here, if someone's listening right now and they're scared to act, what would you suggest is the first step for them?
So, first of all, check in. What is it that scares you? Right. Are you worried about doing the wrong thing? Okay. Which is a very different fear than, I'm worried about pushing this person away and ruining our relationship. So really just get honest with yourself about, okay, what is it here that I'm really afraid of? Okay. And then, if hearing us talk today makes you think that I might be somebody that you could reach out to, that I might, have some help for you, call me. Yeah. When you go to the to freedominterventions.com, you're actually going to see my cell phone on the website. Yeah.
I'll be posting all this stuff in it.
Yeah. Too. So you're going to get directly in touch with me. You can actually book a free consultation on Zoom there on that site too, if you'd rather do it that way.
And there's an assessment too that you might want.
There is. It's a pretty lengthy assessment, but I ask every family that I work with to fill that out, because it's going to help me not only do a better job as an interventionist, but it's also going to help you find the right treatment program for them. The other thing that I'll say is that I don't think every family needs to have somebody like me come into their living room and actually do a professionally led intervention. A lot of the work that I do is actually just coaching families on doing their own interventions. Wow. Sometimes just by tweaking a little bit of the language, or getting the family a little bit more united, or giving them a little bit more structure or a better plan. Families are perfectly capable many, many times of doing this on their own. They don't need to spend the kind of money or take the kind of time that it's going to need to bring somebody like me into their living room. So let's see if that would work even first, before you even think about doing an intervention where I'm sitting in your living room. Let's see if I can coach you on doing this yourselves. The other thing that I would say is on a separate website, soberhelpline.com. It's a website that I've developed that's specifically for families. And every Monday night at 7 p.m. Pacific time, I do a free Zoom call for an hour where you can show up. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to even have your camera on. You can just listen if you want. But it's a time for families to ask anything that they have on their mind. I will give it my full attention. There's another interventionist that co-hosts that with me. Her name is Katie Barr out of Texas. Okay. And we spend our time there just giving families everything we can to help move the ball forward a little bit for them. And a lot of times it's just a matter of, hey, let's just take the fear away from the conversation, because it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be one of these things where it feels just really heavy and fearful. Going to somebody and say, hey, I love you too much to not have this conversation with you right now. Can we talk? Yeah. And really let it come from a place of love. Can really change the trajectory of a conversation. And getting a little bit better educated about what addiction and alcoholism even is can arm you with some facts that maybe you didn't have before.
what do you think are some good support groups for families out there? I've mentioned Al-Anon, Alateen, of course. Are there some other programs out there that are kind
You
of
know,
peer-led?
yeah, some that are peer led. PAL is another one. Parents of Addicted Loved Ones.
Yep.
I think is really, really good. I'm a big proponent of ACA.
I was waiting on that.
Especially for families. I mean, you can see the red book right here behind me.
Yeah, I've got mine. Mine's yellow though.
For families that have either grew up in dysfunctional families or grew up
Yeah.
in homes where there was alcoholism present, it's a similar feel to Al-Anon, but man, for me, it was one of those that really it hit a little differently than Al-Anon did for me.
Well, they really dig into trauma
Yeah.
a lot more.
Yep.
One of the few peer-led groups out there that sit down and get into the trauma.
Yeah.
Great group. I'm a big fan of ACA.
Yeah.
So, well, Matt, thank you so much.
I'm so glad to have been here, Dion. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And thank you, Monty, man, for making sure that Matt and I ended up meeting. Appreciate that, brother.
Monty is the man.
Yeah, as we finish up here, freedominterventions.com. You can go there and find everything that Mark was talking about. I think I just called you the wrong name.
I've been called worse. It's okay. It's Matt, but I've been called a lot worse than Mark.
Yeah, I've been and it's funny because I even put you put you in there as Mark.
That's
So
all right.
yeah, his phone number 541-838-6009. Again, that's 541-838-6009. If you'd like to do more of a group setting, Monday nights is the way to go. Thank you to all of my listeners, whether you were here for the live or for the rewatch. Amber and Michelle, thank you for always being here. I appreciate it. Any parting words as we kind of wrap this up, Matt?
Don't wait. If you have a loved one that's struggling with addiction, don't wait. There is way too much help out there for families to have to continue to struggle the way that you're struggling right now. So if you're feeling like you don't have the answers, there's help. You don't have to wait to get the help that you need.
Absolutely. It could be hard to make that first phone call, but it is so worth it. There's help out there. We don't do it alone. We don't do it alone. And you don't need to do it alone anymore either. Well, thank you to all my listeners. This has been Raw Recovery, a Trudging Together podcast. I love you. You know I do. Peace out. And remember, no one ever